Hey everyone, this is Mike with On Point Preparedness. I wanted to make you all aware of some really important research that I had gathered with regards to the timing of economic collapse and this whole ticking time bomb of a world economy. Ever since 2008, I had subscribed to a multitude of very smart financial analysts that are in this truth movement, or in other words, these folks that are trying to expose the nefarious actions of the Federal Reserve and other central banks and really lift the veil on this falsehood of a functional world economy. And many of these analysts said that, well, really, this whole ship should have sunk back in 2008. And the only reason it survived was because of artificial means like quantitative easing, which propped up the system and just made everything worse. But then quantitative easing slowed down, and many of these analysts were saying, well, it's going to collapse in 2014. Well, it didn't collapse in 2014, and now we're into 2015, and many of these analysts said, well, we can't see this thing functioning by the end of 2015. It's going to crash. And here we are, and it hasn't crashed yet. It is not to say that these analysts are wrong, because if you look at the technical fundamentals, they are just screaming collapse, absolutely screaming collapse. And if you look through your own eyes at Main Street, if you look at America, what's happening on the street, just as I mentioned in my last video, there is just decay and economic slowdown and poverty. It's just written all across the board. And so when you have a completely imaginary and false system, you can pretty much do anything with it. And that's what's happening. Many of these analysts, like Dr. Christopher Martinson, have said that, well, there may be tricks up the Federal Reserve sleeve and the other central bank sleeves that we're not aware about, and they may be able to keep this game going longer. Particularly in an interview he had with Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog 4 weeks ago, he had something incredible to say because his prediction partially came true this week. Take a look at what he has to say.
Who's first? That's the question in the world. Is it going to be Venezuela? Is it going to be Brazil? Could it be Turkey? Right? Interesting story about where Turkey is vis-a-vis also this Russian jet that got shot down. Right? So, but we don't know. So if we have a big a sovereign default that's in one of these countries, that could be the trigger. Maybe it's a company. Maybe it's a Glencore to be a repeat of Lehman. We don't know. But we do know that there's going to be a collapse in the credit. And then we'll have the next stage of this where the central banks freak out one more time and pour more money into the markets. We believe this time giving it to people like you and me, put it on Main Street, and that's when we would say we're going to see that final catastrophic rush out the narrow doorways with everybody. Like my advice is once the Federal Reserve sends you and me money, whether it's a tax rebate or a check, doesn't matter, that you should run, not walk, and buy anything you possibly can with that as fast as possible, because that's the next stage of this story. But stage one, collapse.
So two important things that he said. First is there's any multitude of black swan events that can really cause this credit collapse. Could be a country defaulting on its sovereign debt, could be some type of terrorist attack. We have no idea, neither do I. But what I do want to warn you about is the second part of what he said. That back in 2008 there was a bailout for the banks where they took taxpayer-funded money to bail them out, but he's saying the next bailout is going to be for the citizens, where they give us money. And look what just happened this week. Dutch City plans to pay citizens a basic income, and the Green Party says it could work in the UK. This is Saturday, December 26, 2015. In this article, they're talking literally just about giving all Dutch citizens a basic income for free. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to qualify for it. It is free money. And this is exactly what Dr. Christopher Martinson from Peak Prosperity said was going to happen in one form or another. Now, what I want to warn you about with this is when we have this credit crunch, when we have this collapse, and it very well looks like they may respond this way by giving citizens the money instead of the banks, and the news will be in a frenzy saying, oh, well, this is what should have happened in the first place. We shouldn't have been propping up those corrupt banks. We should have given the money to the people. You know, there's going to be a natural human reaction of joy and elation, and that's probably what's going to be propagated by the news. But make sure you remember this. Make sure you heed the warning from Dr. Christopher Martinson in that this is when it really goes downhill. And you can already see the plan partially manifesting because Here they're doing it right in front of our faces, giving away free money. And so here in the States, I don't know if it'll be a basic income. I don't know if they'll go to that extreme, but certainly how he mentioned it, an enhanced tax return during tax season, or greater subsidy opportunities, or something of that nature. Whenever they start pouring out the money to us, make sure that you're not using it to say, oh, well, I'll just pay down some school debt and things like that. Make sure you get what you need. Start getting into hard assets. Start getting into all those prepper type materials. Now, there are still a lot of other handful of tricks up the central bank sleeves that may happen. Of course, I don't know if you've heard about negative interest rates. Here is from the World Central Bank, negative interest rates in Europe, figure A. You can see the European Central Bank, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, all going below negative interest rates between 0.2 and a full percent. Pretty crazy. If you don't know what negative interest rates are, I like to keep things simple, so think about it this way. Here's from Bloomberg. Imagine a bank that pays negative interest. Depositors are actually charged to keep their money in an account. Crazy as it sounds, several of Europe's central banks have cut key interest rates below zero and kept them there for more than a year. So understand what's going on here. When you give your money and put it into a bank, whether it's checking or savings, you're telling the bank, here is my money. And in the fine print, it's saying that you agree to the bank to loan out your money at interest so that the bank can make a profit off of your money. And just because they're nice, they're going to give you a sliver fraction of a percent of that profit, and that's what you get in your checking statement each year. So I got like $1 last year on my interest rate. Negative interest rate is where you're saying, here bank, here is my money, and you loan it out. You loan out my money to whoever you wish so that you can make a profit off of it. Oh, and by the way, you don't need to pay me anything for that. In fact, you can actually charge me for me to give you my money. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And this is the state of the world. So again, ground yourself in this stuff. It is coming. It is not a matter of if, it is when. Also in the news, another Italian bank starts talking about bail-ins. Italy bank rescues spark bail-in debate as anger at Renzi grows. Really sad story of one individual. Here's this person that is a 63-year-old. He's retired. Sergio had 40,000 euros in his bank, and the bank encouraged him to put it into a bond. And today, Mr. Piccanotti has lost all that money, and the bank has not closed. It was just saved from collapse, much like the bail-ins that have occurred across Cyprus, and I believe Greece was even talking about it. And even in Detroit, they were talking about raiding people's pensions to save the banks. So there's just a whole multitude of ways that they can steal money from you, and we're all very well aware of that, but you may not have been aware about this, how they will give you money. And don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. So, a good way to protect yourself is watch Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money. Just like Dr. Chris Martenson, he talks about how there's going to be a deflationary crash followed by hyperinflation, and giving citizens money, like Dr. Christopher Martenson talked about, would constitute that hyperinflationary environment. But get yourself into hard assets. Make sure you have a couple months worth of cash in a safe. Make sure you get your money out of the banks and diversify it if at all possible. Get into things like food and water and shelter and other prepper materials. Try to think about things like barter. Personally, ammo is a great way of storing your wealth. Don't think about it as a purchase. Just think about it as a transfer of wealth. Ammo, in particular, just an example, has exceptionally long expiration dates, doesn't get improved upon. If you buy a popular caliber, it's very popular and many people would accept it as a medium of exchange. I know that can be a psychological hurdle to put your money into hard assets as a store of wealth that are not actual dollar bills or gold coins, but you really have to change your paradigms here. You really have to change the way you think about holding wealth, because it's not in the dollar, and it's not going to be in any other foreign fiat currency. So, again, I don't have those exact timings on when the collapse will happen, but just wanted to warn you guys, don't be fooled. Don't give in to that joy and elation if this thing comes to the States and they start handing out checks to you, because this is when it starts. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. Hope you enjoyed this. See you guys later.